listen. Somebody tell us when we started.
Roll the dice. Roll the dice. Hey.
We live, baby.
Hey. We're into it.
Well, what do you know? Welcome back. You know what I'm saying? It's episode 125. Okay, great.
Yeah, it is.
125. We are back.
Yeah.
Coming to you live from Mead Street Studios. So shout out to it. We, of course, have our team in. You know what I'm saying? We have two lovely folks joining us here today.
Lovely, lovely.
You obviously can see them if you're watching on YouTube, but you can't see them if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast app
Hopefully
or on
you can feel
SoundCloud.
them.
Right. Maybe you can feel their energy because they're both radiating some good vibes. You know what I'm saying?
Leo season.
No, it's Cancer season.
No.
Don't
coming
skip
soon.
me.
Coming soon.
Don't skip me.
First of all, screw both of it.
Nah, your time
Capricorn
has
season.
passed.
We're done with everything. We're done with it all.
Your time has passed.
We're done with it. I'm sick of it. Cancer season has brought me lots of things.
Joy and love and celebration of your friend.
Lots of things that
whose birthday is on Friday, which I would like y'all to know I'm accepting gifts and cash apps.
Oh, Friday?
It is on
Again,
Friday.
lots of things that I didn't want. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. But we're not talking about me right now. You know what I'm saying?
How did we end up talking about you?
Because Day said Leo season and it's not time.
Well, that was
also time doesn't exist anymore.
Come on, Tessa. See,
wow.
we don't have to
that
see.
was very philosophical.
Right. I'm like, oh my God.
See?
Tessa came in hot with that.
Tessa
She was
said
like,
that
well,
because it's Cancer season, aka emo season.
it is not
Right.
emo
Oh, it
season.
is.
Yes, it
A flood
is.
We are a
Kids.
group of sensitive savages, okay?
It's
I'm
really
might
Cancer, I'm a
cry.
Cancer rising, so I get it.
All right.
But I'm feeling it.
All of my
No.
first moons are all Cancer. I'm like as true Cancer as you
Oh,
can
damn.
get. We
Yeah,
are just
she's a true
sensitive
Cancer.
savages.
Very sensitive and a
I will
bully.
cry in a
Yes.
heartbeat, but I will beat your ass also.
Yeah, she's crazy.
It's a good
You know
quality.
what I'm saying?
She's
Like I
fucking
might
crazy.
cry while I'm doing it because my feelings are hurt. But
She's
What
hit me
you
a
not
lot of
gonna
times
do
and
is
never
do me
cried,
like
so I'm
that.
just letting you know right now. But also,
well, you're never being mean to me. You're just picking on me, so then I have to put hands on you.
picking, I've never done it. But
don't
I will
lie?
say, lie, that's subjective. I will say when I clock into work tomorrow, I'm gonna be like to my boss when I clock in at like 6:15. Time doesn't exist.
like,
Like,
listen,
it's gonna be like,
so you're
Sarah,
like,
where
Sarah,
are you?
you're late. Listen,
Time doesn't exist.
it's not a real thing.
I'm gonna
Don't
be like,
ask me
time
those
doesn't exist.
questions.
Calm down, and then I'm gonna walk away.
No, you got to make sure you have receipts. I'm gonna be like, okay, if you have a problem with that response, please see at Tessa Holes. Okay.
Yeah, because
She's the
she
one who said that
time
was okay.
doesn't exist.
So like, it's above.
I'm about to
me
use
now.
it though.
Can I have one of those passes?
Yeah, I give them out freely.
Okay.
If I'm dating a guy, I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, Sierra, we've been together for 2 years. Hey, time doesn't exist. I'm out.
Right, cool out. It's an entanglement.
And then I said entanglement, dog, and then I disappear in a cloud of smoke. Who knows what the smoke will smell like? It might.
It better
smell
smell
like reefer.
good.
Who knows?
Probably
Anyway,
loud as hell.
It's a lot.
We're going to do
Forget
our
about me.
weekend recap really quick, and then we're going to let you both give us some real introductions. And then we'll get the show on the road. Okay, so Sierra had the best weekend. At least you had more fun things occurring. So I'm going to go first because my story is short. I don't have a story, and
I
said
know
you
because
have
that's
things
what
to
happens
tell
when
me.
I go away from you. Go ahead.
You're right. I don't have anything to do. So this weekend, I did have things to do. So I have been talking about how I have been procrastinating for a while
no way.
on trying to move out of my apartment. I'm moving out of my apartment and into another apartment. And I have been moving very, very slowly to do that. And so this weekend, if anybody who knows me has been to my home for any number of parties, functions, kickbacks, whatever, I have been in the same apartment for like 2.5 years. And I've had the same couch for a very long time, almost as long as I've lived in Seattle. And it has just like many memories. And
Who does it?
It does of having fun and having sleepovers and parties, my parents, like graduation, like all kinds of stuff. And I'm ignoring Sarah because I know she's talking about, I got some of those memories too, but that is not the point. The point is,
was it where I sat? Please.
relax.
Please,
I mean, I cannot confirm nor
please
deny.
Spare me. I wish to hear about it no more.
I can neither confirm or deny. However, I got rid of, I've just been getting rid of furniture that I've had for a while, and it just is a little like bittersweet, like I'm very excited for the next chapter of my life, but it feels like kind of like the end of an era. I've lived in my apartment by myself for a while. Like I have just grown up so much since I've been here with that couch and in that space. And so I've been feeling very kind of nostalgic about like getting rid of my things. And so I've been feeling kind of emotional all weekend. Like I'm happy to be moving, but also like that's my house, that's my stuff, and I'm getting rid of my stuff. But it's fine. And so that's what I did all weekend. And I ordered some things on Instagram.
Save all the bralettes for me.
I will. I took them. Shit, you know how much fucking clothes I got? I gave away 16 pairs of shoes, like 6 bags of clothes, and I still have shit to give away. and like figure out what I'm going to do. I have to get storage because there's not enough closet space where I'm going. It's just a whole ordeal. Okay, pray for me and figuring out my closet situation. But that's really all I did all weekend long. And I cooked, and that's what I did. I did nothing.
Wow, that's crazy.
Meanwhile,
no evidence of that today. But go ahead.
I don't bring food to the studio. Why are you be on
Yes,
me?
you do all the time.
For me to eat, though.
Wow, that's rude. Because then everybody else's food is for you to eat, huh?
You goddamn right. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine.
Wow. It started to get a little racial.
Interesting.
Cool.
Tell
Yeah.
us, Sierra, what was your weekend like? She had shit to do. You had stuff going.
First of all, I'm gonna be a little loopy, maybe. I don't know
stories?
because I'm just really tired.
Yes.
So my sister got married this weekend. My oldest sister.
Congratulations, Symphony and
Yes,
Javon.
they got married, and it was a great time. I was the maid of honor, and
Come on, honor.
yeah,
Honorable.
it was or I guess maid of glory, I guess. But it was just like
glory?
a lot of like just things that you got to do. Like, I got up at like 6 a.m, get all my sister's bags out of the car, which if she was not getting married, I would not be doing that.
Like, bags
I'm
out the car. You got brothers.
Up.
Why would you
Like,
be getting bags? You got brothers. Excuse me.
Yeah, he wasn't there. Yeah, so it was just like, it was a thing, and I was like, whatever, just
Fine, you're getting married
making
today.
sure, because I know, like, I knew that doing her wedding and being like her maid of honor and stuff was going to be a challenge because me and my sister are very both anxious people, and so
Big
then
warriors.
when those two things collide, it can be a thing but she's more higher than I am, if you can believe that.
What do you mean? Like worries more than you?
Yes, and so
Okay.
then I'm like, dude, shut up, and saying
It's not that
and
important. It's not that big of a deal.
Right, but it's like it is kind of important because she's getting married. She's about to figure out what she's doing for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And so I just had to be like, okay, you just have to be the person that keeps her calm. I feel like I did it.
An okay job? Okay.
Yeah, like I B plus. Yeah, just a little
Hey,
bit.
that's a passing
I
grade.
got a little snappy at one time, but she was like saying things like, "Sierra, where is this?" And I'm like, "I didn't even know you fucking had that, dude. Like, why are you
Why would
talking
I
about?"
know?
So, but it was a beautiful wedding.
It was very
She
cute.
got a Airbnb in Tulalip. It was at a beach house, like
Cute.
3 levels. Like the master suite was to die for. The shower was totally, rendezvous-ish.
Come on,
like,
rendezvous-ish.
send
So
a
you got some
text.
extracurriculars
Yeah, you can send a text
in
to
the
the
shower?
first floor and be
Okay.
like, "Yo, meet me in the layer." It's like a lot going on. Like it was a great, like
Okay.
the master suite had a bomb view of like the lake, the water, like, and there was like a reading like little nook. Like there was just nooks everywhere, beds
on,
everywhere.
nooks
It
and
was just
crannies.
great. Yeah, it had a lovely balcony overlooking the water, and you just go down the stairs and you're at the beach. It's like high living. There's an elevator in the bitch. It's a lot.
Wow.
So it was just great.
Cute.
Like the house was very spacious. Big island. I love island. Okay.
You don't
do a
cook,
lot
though.
of things on the island. Yes, I do.
Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
What does that have to do with cooking? An island?
And you mean an island in the kitchen? That's what I thought you meant. An island in the house.
What does that have to do with cooking?
That's what island you prep food and things. on
Duh.
the island.
That's what I love islands.
I know, but you don't cook is what I'm trying
I
to say.
do cook. What are you saying?
Huh?
How do you think I eat?
Nothing. You know what?
Exactly.
Continue your
Yeah,
story.
shut
Go
your
ahead.
ass up.
Go ahead.
Damn.
Continue your
Anyway,
story.
like,
Go ahead.
what does that have to do? Because I like a particular piece of furniture in the house. It's like,
No,
now
I
we're-
live and die
now
by
we're
an
talking,
island.
Now we're talking about my cooking skills, and I don't want to talk to you anymore. Cut this off, Talia. Anyway, so I do cook. Anyway, how do you think I got all these titties? Anyway,
Come on, titties.
So,
you know what? You got damn right.
So the wedding was good. My brother. So for me, this was, anybody that knows me knows how much I care and love my siblings and stuff. And so this was actually the first time that we were all 5 of us were together in the same space. So
Love
I have
it.
2 brothers and 2 sisters, and our growing up story was a little different. Like I have one brother that grew up in Atlanta, and then the rest of my siblings grew up here. And so it was like when we were together, it was like
So
you
amazing.
could never tell. You could never tell. Like my brother is literally, all of them like just fit right in. And so it was just such a great time. Great time had by all.
Come on,
and
family reunion.
yeah. Oh, I will say I fucked up, guys.
What'd you do? Oh yes, tell us a story. She told me she had
So,
a story, and I
like-
couldn't hear it till we were on air.
So how we did it was because the house where it was located, we didn't want to overcrowd the neighborhood with a bunch of cars because obviously it was a really small wedding, and with COVID going on, and so we didn't want to overwhelm the neighborhood with like a bunch of cars, and also like
Bunch
the
of black
wedding
people.
is like predominantly black and people of color. Like her husband is Japanese and black. I think he has a little bit of white in him, but I'm not sure, so I'm not going to speak on that. I'm pretty sure he does, but I know that his family is primarily like Japanese and black. And so it was a mixed wedding, but it was also not a mixed neighborhood. So it was like we didn't need any problems, people calling the police. We did have a little moment where an elderly man just like invited himself onto the balcony to ask questions, and it's just like,
first of all, how did you get back here?
Right.
Why would you just stroll up into a backyard
like
that
who
isn't
are
yours?
you? So I was like, I was really nervous about that, but it ended up working out. Like the actual neighbors were like waving at us when it was happening, and of course, me being the maid of honor, I was also the person of contact because we had people park at the beach, and then we had somebody drive down and chauffeur them up to the house. And so
fancy.
Yeah, just a tad. And so then I was the main contact for everyone. And so, like right before the wedding, I had a very intense moment with one of the guests. Mm-hmm. One of those things where it's like, oh.
Did you slap her?
No.
Okay.
No.
Cool,
I had an intense moment, and so I felt my blood pressure rise, but I calmed myself back down. In the process of that, it's like, okay, Sierra, it's time to walk down the aisle. I'm already irritated. I am walking down the aisle to this, one of my favorite songs by Music Soul Child. I fucking forgot the ring.
No, you didn't.
I forgot the ring.
So you had to send somebody to go get it?
Yeah. I was walking down the aisle and I was like, well, I'm walking. I can't stop.
And you can't turn back
I can't turn around. So I get down the aisle and I'm freaking out. And so I like say to my pastor, I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I forgot the ring. And he was like, calm down. So it's whatever. He's fine. He's like, I've done it before. Like, it's fine. So then I tried to get like our videographer to grab it. And he was not being discreet about it. He's like, I can't find it. I was like, man, shut the fuck up.
You're supposed to whisper,
I was just so stressed.
Top secret mission.
Yeah, and so thankfully the pastor's wife was like,
there.
He was like, he called for his wife, and then so she went and got it. Then they like, so how it was set up is like on the balcony, it's like a skinny walkway. So it's like, a lot of people can't fit. It's like, it's a walkway for one person, but we're fitting like videographer, the photographer, and then my dad is still in the aisle, so it's not a lot of room. So she got the ring and then passed it up, got it to me.
Telephone.
And then when I opened the box, the tag was still on the ring. So I was
Jesus.
sitting there,
No price.
and mind you, we're doing like a Zoom call too. So I'm like sitting there like twisting the shit off, and then I gave it to her. I was like, and nobody even noticed. My sister didn't notice, but then I got drunk and told her what happened, whatever. It's fine. I had to tell her. So, and then I also had my first Incredible Hulk. I'm so really excited.
Tell people what that is for those who don't know.
So it is Hypnotic, 7-Up, and Hennessy. And so my friends were like,
put 7-Up.
Yeah,
I never had a 7-Up.
I guess it's supposed to be at 7-Up, but I guess it's Hypnotic and Hennessy.
That's all I've had.
But that 7-Up sets it right off. It's like really healthy for you.
Come on, 7-Up.
Really good for the stomach. And so my friends were like making fun of me. They're like, what the fuck is it, 2006? And I'm just
First of all,
I didn't get to have any, so I'm going to have some.
That's
and
a
I had a
classic
couple
that
of them.
cannot be hated. Like, it can't be hated on. Incredible Hulk is top tier.
I had a lot of them. I mean, a couple of them.
I had
a couple of them, but I was like, man, I was in the kitchen busting suds, just having a good time. I didn't take off my dress till like
you was doing
3 o'clock busting suds.
Oh, you was washing dishes?
Yeah, I was, because I had to get it out of my way, and I knew people weren't going to do it, and it was just a lot to take in. Like literally, my new phrase from this weekend is "it's a lot to take in." Pause. Literally, it's a lot to take in because there were just so many things happening. That's a lot to take in. Just so much. But we all had
beautiful.
a great time. It was a great time.
The photos look great.
I had some new VOD, and so that's good. We're gonna have some.
Oh yeah, you did send us a photo. It looked good.
Yeah, it looked good. It tasted good. It was nice. But that was it. I'm just happy that she got married, and that it's happened, and it was so beautiful, and it went off without a hitch. It was great. I cried a lot, and I don't know why. That's why we need to get done with cancer season, because I'm over it.
Of course you know why. Yeah. Who doesn't cry at weddings?
No, but this is the thing. I'm not like a crier like that. So I was just like literally
married.
We were up in the bridal suite. And this was weird too.
Come on, bridal
we were up
suite.
in the bridal suite or whatever, and I just like picked up my sister's ring and just started crying. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, falling together. What's going on here? And my sister looked at me and she was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I have to go. I was like, I must leave you at once. Don't look at me. So I left.
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah. And then after the wedding, after all of the bridesmaids tore up the entire,
nobody helped you clean
suite, Well, my sister. Well, it was me and my sister's friend Nene, and so we cleaned up the suite and like made it all pretty. I should have taken a picture, but it's kind of weird. Like we got some rose petals, put it a heart on the bed, put it.
You did it for them.
Yeah, some champagne in a basket, and then like some things and stuff because we all stayed the
that's
weekend.
cute.
So we did that, and I was like, I'm creating this bed for my sister to mate
Do the
in,
things.
and that's weird. And I just would like to go.
It's
and
a little
so,
strange, but
it's a
that
little
shows
weird.
that shows your commitment
Yeah.
and like love
I
for your
don't know.
sister. Because
I
I would
don't
have been
know.
cursing my sister out the day after. I'd have been like, "Look, you see what I do for you?"
Yeah, we put
What I put
chocolates
my
and
brain
shit. It was
through
a
for
lot. Like we put like it was just it was real flowers. I was just like, this is a lot for me to take in. I would like to go.
You putting the rose petals.
I
down,
don't
like,
want to be a part of that. I don't want to be in the same house with you consummating your marriage. Please. It's a lot to take in. Even me thinking about it makes my whole like it makes my kneecaps fall off. So anyway, let's get into our lovely guest because I'm over it and I'm starting to feel hot. But congratulations to my sister and her husband.
Absolutely.
And like I told you on Facebook, welcome to the family, brother. And don't call me when she starts aggravating you because
Hey,
I have
she
served
said, I'm done.
my time and I gave her away to you yesterday. I'm done with it. I've sent her away. But anyway,
He's paid the bride price. He got her. He knows he's responsible. Okay?
yes, and I just wanted to be clear that if and when I ever get married, my sister will be climbing a mountain, taking my pictures. Because first of all, I'm scared of heights.
Uh-huh.
That's one. We had to climb down to the beach to take pictures. I almost died.
And your wedding dress or
Yeah,
wedding
and
day
then,
dress.
but this is the thing. This is what I did. I made sure, because my dress was very flowy, a little choke. I made sure that my drawers were the same color as my dress, just in case it should fly up. I was in uniform.
Come on, uniform.
I let everybody know that. Like, if you see anything,
That's forward thinking.
yeah, it was my good drawers from
Good
Vicky.
draws.
Don't tell nobody.
Come on. Look at that, you guys. Look at growth.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you
Adulthood
know.
matching the draws to your dress.
Yeah, it was a nice.
I
green.
have never. So I am
Yeah.
in full support. I mean, I haven't been in nobody's wedding. I was supposed to be in one this year, but like it got canceled because COVID. But like whatever.
Well, you were in our wedding, so it's fine.
You're right. I was there. We are married, so
Yeah.
But
But we just got divorced last week. It was an entanglement.
people
so.
believe her often when she tells strangers that we are married, and she will tell strangers. and they will believe.
Because they would be rude to be like, no, she's not, and I'd be like, well, you can kiss ass.
Dickhead. She just be talking.
Yeah.
Anyway, we gonna let our favorite guest.
What
right
do you
here
think
in
I
the
can't
room.
fool you?
No,
I'm saying.
bitch.
Whatever. Go ahead.
I'm.
Yeah.
Who?
Prime real estate. Let's do
You
it.
better believe it.
All right, let's introduce our
You got the
guest.
cash?
Please, it's a lot. You just always on me. Anyway, let's go.
Okay, we're gonna let our guests introduce themselves. Essentially, we wanted to have some conversations around allyship today. We have been seeing a lot of really strong conversation on Instagram and Twitter about allyship and what that looks like. Particularly here in Seattle, there's been all kinds of things because of the chop. So I have been lurking on Tessa specifically. I'll speak for myself. Tessa is a graphic artist, if I'm correct, and she draws really great animations of what has been going on in order to kind of display the news of here's what's happening, here's what's going on, here's the nuances that you should think about, here's what you can take away from it at great personal cost, because I can only imagine doing all of that and going from being a regular human on Instagram to having 1 billion followers who are commenting and bothering you all of a sudden very quickly.
It's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in.
Literally,
Okay?
it is.
But I have been obsessed with Tessa. So as soon as we had this idea for this episode, Tessa was the first person I thought of okay, I need you to come on the show because I stalk you every day and I would love for you to come here. And then Jordan also had the great idea well, Day is awesome. And I also follow Day on Twitter. And I was like, well, I also know that he's great and has all the great things to say.
Yeah.
So sign us up. So we have Tessa and Day here, and they're both going to tell you things about themselves that they would like for you to know before we get started. Whatever that means.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, welcome.
My name is Day. Somebody texted me right before I came here and asked how I what was their exact question? How I put so much energy behind Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them I had 10 interns and they
Stop
fully
it.
believed me.
Oh, wow.
And then I was concerned that the energy that I display on social media makes me saying that I have 10 interns believable.
I mean,
I have
would
no
believe
intern. I have
it.
no. It's just me.
You just be on, but you be on there. You be having all kinds of shit. You be retweeting everybody. You got the videos. I know where it happened. I know when it happened. I know who it happened.
I stopped looking at the screen time average after every
You be
week
on
because it gives
Twitter.
me anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Your Twitter
Can
fingers
you
is
turn
hot.
that off? I'm tired of my phone being like, "Oh, you've been on here." So what, bitch? I was on Pinterest. Like screen time. Like
and it's COVID.
maybe I was trying to redecorate my apartment.
And doesn't
You know,
it count when you like stream movies and stuff?
Yeah, it will break it down and show you like if it's like
Right.
social media versus like streaming versus like it breaks up to tell you like what is it that you're doing. It's not just like one like block of screen time. So at least it has some nuance. It tells you what you've been doing, but
I don't like it.
it's all scary.
It's bad.
Feels really FBI-ish.
It does. A lot of
feds
things
are always
do right
watching.
now. But I am on social media a lot, but if I'm not there, actually that's not true. Even if I'm doing other things, I'm probably on social media.
Probably.
I organize with Decrim Seattle. One of it's like a big coalition that comprises of smaller organizations, but
Yeah.
doing the work. Orgs like Wabla, Creative Justice, No New Youth Jail. Oh my God.
So basically,
I'm gonna
all
get
of the
mad.
important grassroots organizations that are working to defund Seattle police,
Sure.
decriminalize Seattle in a lot of different ways.
And yeah, with a partnership with King County Equity now that has a lot of members and key figures from orgs like Africa Town, and so it's been good. I mean, I think we had a pretty good week, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but it definitely has been a lot. I'm also transitioning right now between jobs, so it's just been all over the place. For the last couple of years, I was at this digital media company called Cut, Cut.com.
We know Cut.
Love
We've been
Cut.
playing
We've
their
been playing
game,
Truth or
Truth or Drink,
Drink.
by the Cut.
Oh,
Okay.
shit. Well, yeah, I played a couple of those on some videos, but just recently leaving there. Hasn't been announced yet, but I started working for like a more like national organizing
Come on, job.
thing.
That's dope.
You could
Well,
keep a top
it-
secret, but congrats on the.
Well,
things.
it's been like it's going back to working as, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like paid organizing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pros and cons to kind of actually making sure that you can sustain the work while getting paid. But it's a generational thing too. You know, I think a lot of like activists and organizers, especially with bigger platforms, there's always that question about like, should you get paid as an organizer? But I think like younger millennials, Gen Zs are like, fuck it, here's my Venmo, here's my PayPal.
You better believe
know what
it.
I
This
mean?
work is not free.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
And I'm
right.
definitely on that camp, but it is a nuanced conversation. But I making that transition, still trying to do media stuff, but more like now, like I was organizing for free and on my time and working at a media company, and now I'm like working, organizing, but also doing it on a like I don't get paid to do decrim stuff and
Right.
things like that. But trying to do media like for free on my time. So we'll see how that transition goes.
Well, I don't know how you sleep, but
Right.
we're happy to have you.
Yeah, and it's
I'm
dope to
happy
get
to be
paid
here.
to do the,
I'm
do the
happy
work
to
that you
be
love,
here.
so.
The work is exactly. You
Yeah.
literally took the words I'm
It's
going to say.
dope.
Like
If
getting
you-
paid to do the work that you love. That the nuance comes in when it's like, well, how high powered is this
Sure.
person, and why are they doing this work? But
Right,
as a
Yeah.
person that we can see is like clearly, you know, paying attention to nuance and has been doing this work in your free time. It's like, why not get paid to do something that you're good at that people look at you for?
At least some health insurance, you
Like
know?
right, like it's like basic
Something,
needs
yeah.
though. People forget that it's
It's
like
actually doing
do that
full-time,
work, but
yeah.
it's like, but also if I do it for free, you know,
Right.
like I don't get any of like the real supports I need from an actual employment opportunity, which you deserve, and you should still be able to do good work. So I love it.
Try to write on the side too. Want to mention
So
that.
both y'all do everything. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just trying to write a little bit. Recently been writing for The Nation. Wrote a piece recently on Asian Americans and their role in the movement / anti-blackness within the community.
Ooh,
Well, what do you know?
I can't wait to
Wow.
read that.
Love being
Yeah.
aligned.
Yes, 'cause
Okay.
that's
Well, Tessa
yeah.
girl, tell us the things.
Yeah, so I'm having a very strange month. It's been a lot to take in.
Yes.
Literally, yeah.
I'm Tessa. I'm a visual artist and writer, and I am under book deadline for a nonprofit or nonfiction graphic novel. There's no good way to say that. That
But
I've been
it's so
working
cool,
on
though.
for half a decade.
Wow,
Insane.
it's gonna be lit when it comes out.
Yeah, I still have 18 months until it's due. It takes a really long time to draw 300 pages.
Oh, geez, just
Yeah.
a
I
light
love
300
graphic
pages.
novels.
Wow.
Oh yeah, mine. It's involved multiple international research trips and translation across 4 languages and 5 dialects. And
Girl,
it is
what?
Nothing
so
big.
this is why,
Okay,
Casual.
nothing
No,
big.
So this is what I was supposed to be doing before I accidentally became an embedded comics journalist in CHOP. So, so I'm holed up in Port Townsend. I lived in Seattle for almost a decade. I lived on 16th and Denny, so right
in the
outside of
city.
CHOP, and like that is my neighborhood. You know, those are the places where I've had like after hours mac and cheese at bars, made
that, yeah.
like questionable decisions I don't necessarily regret.
Right.
That
That is my
That's
home.
Your city.
Yeah,
Right.
and so you know, I was holed up in my studio working on my book and just watching the country come alive in a way that I have never seen around necessary conversations around race and policing.
Yeah.
And I basically told my editor, who's a woman of color, I texted her and I was like, I can't ethically sit this one out. You know,
I want to do something.
I feel like I have the context and a creative approach that might actually be able to lend some clarity as to what's going on the ground. And I had a lot of friends who were, you know, frontline protesters going every day. And so I was seeing, you know, texts, I was seeing social media posts from my friends talking about, you know, the police being the ones to initiate violence. And I was seeing how that story was being portrayed in the media, particularly national media, and the disconnect there. And knowing that if I was somebody who had deep ties to this community and I couldn't figure out what was really going on, I had a sense of how lost any outsiders would be.
Right.
So basically I was like, all right, I'm going in, I'm bringing a blank sketchbook and I'm just going to hit the ground and see what happens. And with COVID, you know, normally my partner lives in Seattle, but his living situation is such that if I'm going to be like neck deep in protests, I couldn't stay there. So I just put up a social media post being like, okay, family, mutual aid, I need a base camp.
Right.
And so Artists Trust, which is an arts nonprofit that's basically right outside of CHOP, they're like, well, we're all working from home. Do you want to just come live in our conference room?
Wow.
Yeah. So I brought my
That's
sleeping bag
insane.
and just threw it on the floor, took over their conference room, and that's where I was based out of. So I was living there for, I thought it was going to be like 4 or 5 days, and then it turned into 3 weeks. And then my notion of like, maybe I'll be able to tell some interesting stories, went viral and took on a really, really different role that I am very much still processing. So that's part of the reason when you asked me to come on this, I was like, you know, talking this through might actually
Be helpful.
yeah, like this might be a little bit of therapy because it has been a lot to take in.
Yeah,
That sounds like an
seriously.
episode title. That feels
Yeah, that, you know, maybe want to
coming
write that
alive
down.
here.
Yeah,
Oh, for sure.
a
Yeah,
lot
for
to
sure.
take in. Okay. great.
Yeah, and just that notion of ending up, you know, if you start to have a platform on something, people will tell you you're an authority, even if you're saying, I am not
the
authority.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of the
Which
reason.
you wrote on like every single photo that you, like every
Yes.
single drawing you wrote that
Yeah.
as many times as you could.
Well, and that's the thing is internet flattens nuance.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why I was like a podcast. I love that all of us have said the word nuance at least 3 times. You know, that's the format to really be like, let's dig into some of these meaty contradictions because this is complicated.
Right. It's not cut and draw. Cut and
Definitely
dry.
is
if I could
not.
talk.
It's definitely
Cut and
gray.
draw.
Freudian slip.
Literally.
I know, right? It's me. It's my jealousy of your artistic capacity that I don't have. Like, I wish I could like doodle and draw and be awesome, but like, I will just use my voice because that's all I've got, which I stand by. Well, lovely to have both of you on, and I think it's really interesting the 2 different ways each of you have come into allyship to the Black community specifically, but also doing that kind of community grassroots like leg work. And it's very interesting because as a person who like personally is very politically motivated, I found it really complicated to figure out how exactly I wanted to participate. And I was a person that I feel like, and I'm sure, Sierra, you probably got similar texts too, people asking like, or telling you be safe at protests, like making the assumption that you're going to go because like you're that kind of person, right?
Yeah.
And like understanding like, well, actually, like I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to protests or I wanted to, but I wasn't sure how I wanted to do that. And just managing like, okay, how am I going to show my support, and also balancing with the fact that like, but like I'm still Black as fuck also, and I still also feel lots of pain and stress, and sometimes you don't want to go out and do that kind of thing. So how do you support, and how do you feel like you're being like true to yourself and true to your community at large? And I think that's the space where allyship becomes so important, right? It's like we can do this work every day, but well, you can't do the work. We live the work is really what I want to say, right? So it's like to go to protests and to do all kinds of things. It's like sometimes like I can't do that. I can't do that and do my regular job. Like I can't, do that every day. When you're trying to process how it what's happening actually impacts you. And I think that is a space where like allyship is important, and not only allyship but accompliceship, right? Like actually having skin in the game, right? Moving into a conference room, which I would never fucking do, and a sleeping bag, which I've never purchased. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I am committing myself to figuring out how I can support this movement, right? Like, that is also part of the reason why I was like, okay, these are two people that I think would be excellent to have on the show, because they are clearly displaying the difference between saying that I'm an ally and using my voice and taking action to say, like, I 100% am aligning myself with this cause, right? So my first question for both of you, feel free to decide however you answer or who goes first, is what does allyship mean to you? It's such a general question, but I really always love it.
Oh, okay, my turn. Hand pass. I mean, simply put, it's about understanding that you benefit from systems of oppression, and rather than feeling shame or guilt and letting that be the end of it, it's taking a hard look in the mirror and thinking, okay, well, this is a reality. I'm not going to shy away from it. How can I leverage this to actually be of some use? And I think, especially now with so much of everyone's lives moving to the internet, both with just the progression of culture, but also with COVID, it's really difficult for, I think, people who are maybe new to the concept of systemic oppression and racism to know how to slot into this, and the difference between like putting up a hashtag versus like actually finding a way to throw yourself into the fray. And what it, for me, being an ally means like you have to throw down something that actually feels like it has stakes, you know. Don't put up a social media post, don't throw money at something. Take a look at what would actually feel like it's giving something, but it's taking away something that I have and reallocating it. And so that's what I try and ask myself in how I use my voice in this. And I'm often extremely uncomfortable. And I think that's as it should be, because if you are not a Black or Indigenous voice in this fight and you're going to be throwing yourself into those communities, you need to really carefully think through what you're trying to accomplish and do your due diligence on whether you're being truly respectful of the people that you're trying to be of service to.
Absolutely. I probably couldn't, like, I can't do anything but like snap right now. But also, I think you described precisely the difference between allyship and accompliceship. And like the way that I learned, like the best way to understand the difference between the two is this, like, it's like an old like phrase, proverb, whatever. But it's like when making like breakfast, like making bacon and eggs, the chicken is aligned, but the pig is like is invested, right? Like the chicken is like donating some eggs, like, all right, cool, you can have them, but they don't have no skin in the game, like they're living. But like the pig has sacrificed something here to the cause, right? Like to give bacon, I'm giving a piece of myself to whatever it is in a way to show that I'm truly aligned. And like that is what accompliceship looks like. You can give eggs, but like, and eggs are great, we like them, we'll eat them, but like the bacon, you know, feels a little more, we like it a little better. I mean, I like bacon, so like I'm aligned to that. But absolutely, Jay, go ahead.
Allyship. I guess the black squares on Instagram. Just kidding.
I would love for us to talk about that. I feel like
we could easily talk about that too.
No.
Performative allyship.
I actually
so much side eye.
That black square got me into some good conversations around. I mean, I'm definitely gonna answer the question, but accessibility and protests and things like that. I think the black squares, I definitely came out and was like, you're blocking the algorithm, you're doing this, and which is all true. And I think there was a lot of complacency with especially influencers and non-black micro celebrities, macro celebrities, whatever, using that as like, oh, here, I did something.
Right. Or you put some Virgils on it.
Right. But I had some good conversations around people feeling frustrated because they were in situations where they couldn't physically attend protests.
Yes.
And trying to figure out ways to get involved, and found an opportunity where I think a lot realized was easy. It was, I wouldn't even call it just even giving eggs, probably less than that. Right. And so but anyway, allyship for me, I've been doing a lot of reflecting on that actually, and digging into my own story and realizing that a lot of like learning of how to be a good ally growing up in Hawaii consisted of trying to process different feelings my dad was having. My dad is an immigrant from South Korea, a black man, half Korean, half black. My mom is a Korean immigrant, and I'm somebody who identifies as Asian American. And I try to be clear, like especially with my black family, that I'm 100,000% proud of being Korean and black, but visibly presenting as Asian American, knowing that comes with a different lived experience than like my black cousins in Atlanta.
Right. You could claim it as loud as you want to, but because you visibly present as
exactly,
Asian,
and I'm not going to
different.
pretend like these conversations that need to be centering black and indigenous folks are necessarily like I have as much on the line. You know what I mean? And so, but for my dad, who is visibly black, and growing up in South Korea, I just remember, I think the first mistake I made when all this was going on, because lots of mistakes have been made, even through all the victories, was watching the murder of George Floyd on the video and immediately sending it to my dad and being like, oh my God, like this is like the day of, or the night of when the video was floating around. Yeah. And obviously even myself, having a different lived experience, but also being a brown person, was like, holy shit, this is the worst video I've ever seen. And that's my thought. And sending it to my dad, and my dad having a lot more of like a visceral reaction, right? And kind of having to sit with him through that, and not really knowing what to say, but knowing that me sharing the video re-traumatized him in a lot of ways too. Wow. And kind of checking myself and being like, maybe I should have checked in. And obviously things like trigger warnings and content warnings are important, but just reminding myself in that moment that my experience is different from my father's in a lot of ways, and similar in a lot of ways too. And I think for me, remembering that, like especially in that relationship, knowing that I can communicate and engage with the Asian American Pacific Islander communities a lot easier than my dad can, and knowing that a lot of that allyship responsibility comes in trying my best to keep that community accountable in ways that in the nuanced ways that I have learned through my father's story and his experience growing up in that specific community. And I think I think a lot of Asian Americans are interested and also combative of the perspective that I try to bring out there, because it tries to show things like, stories that my father went through, but also stories that I think the Asian communities aren't yet ready to address. A lot of their anti-blackness. I mean, we just marched down the International District a couple weeks ago on our route back to the King County Jail from the youth jail, and as soon as we passed the ID, all the Asian business owners were like immediately like shutting their doors, like putting the fences up. Yeah, exactly. And so it's just one of those things where there's still so much to learn. And I mean, even within the anti-blackness, you have like a lot of weird American dream beliefs that are still rooted in the Asian community. That it's the Asian community that our elected leaders in Seattle continue to tokenize and hide behind. It's like, oh, if you want to sweep the homeless people, like as the mayor, she has no reason to do so until the Asian community is like, yeah, actually we want them out of our neighborhoods too.
Right. That not in my backyard energy.
Right.
Yeah. I think we will definitely delve into that more in the interview. But before we do that, I do want to hear Tessa talk about your vocalness as an ally and like what brought you to that point. They had hit on just like 3 questions at once.
Right. I was just thinking
I was like,
yeah,
he just like really connected that. But yeah,
very well.
Yeah, definitely. We could talk about that all day.
We gonna
get to it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting hearing your story, and I read your piece in The Nation and did some mild stalking before this. Big fan. Well, normally I would do more due diligence on all of this, but my last month has been I have just been trying to keep my head above water. But I think part of the reason I have such a sense of the the necessity of nuance in this conversation is I visually present in a way that is very different than my family backstory. And so I'm mixed, and the graphic novel that I'm working on is my grandmother was a journalist in Shanghai during the communist takeover, and she ended up having an affair with a Swiss diplomat, which is why...
Okay,
Ooh,
spicy.
scandal.
Come on, Grandma.
Damn,
Scandal.
Hulu.
Right.
Right. Me.
You
So-
gotta write that story.
So my so that's year 5 working on it.
She's like, that is Instagram writing. Okay, great.
right. Come on, Hulu.
So basically, my mom never met her dad, and basically the Swiss diplomat wanted to fuck a pretty Chinese lady who was 20 years older or 20 years younger rather, and so my grandma, she wrote for pro-nationalist newspapers, and so she ended up a single mother with a mixed race bastard child while she was being persecuted by the communist government.
Casual.
Wow.
So
Casually.
right. So she and my mom eventually fled the country as refugees right before the Great Leap Forward in 1957, and they fled to Hong Kong, which has again become like extremely pertinent with what's going on with China's basically like grab of power now. And so once my grandma got to Hong Kong, she ended up writing a memoir called 8 Years in Communist Shanghai, Love, Starvation, Persecution. A little bit dramatic.
That sounds really
Right,
good.
I'm like,
I
okay,
mean,
that
I'm
sounds
into it.
spicy.
So that ended up
Right,
becoming
Google
a national bestseller in Hong Kong and Taiwan. And my grandma used the money from that to put my mom into this elite Hong Kong boarding school, which is where my mom learned to speak English. And then my grandma had a mental breakdown and was diagnosed as schizophrenic, which was eventually revised to bipolar disorder.
Wow.
And she was institutionalized throughout the
Oh,
1960s.
stop it.
So
Wow.
basically, my
Here in the
mixed race
US or
mother,
there?
no, this is in Hong Kong,
Oof.
was raised effectively as an orphan by her boarding school, and she would sneak out on the weekends to visit her mother in the mental
Stop.
institution,
Wow.
and didn't tell anyone because of the stigmas about mental illness.
Okay,
Right.
Hulu for real.
But it's this interesting thing where it's like you look at my face, and nobody would expect that much of my worldview was informed by being raised by a traumatized Chinese immigrant. And my dad is British; he's also an immigrant, so both my parents are immigrants. But my
Same.
white father. He has a much stronger accent than my mother because she speaks impeccable, slightly British
Wow.
accented English. And I grew up in a town of 350 with like literally no diversity or access to, we didn't have TV, the internet didn't exist.
Where did you grow up?
Point Reyes in Northern California.
Wow.
So I had this is getting rambling, but you want
No, it's
Girl,
good.
you're asking
You
about
are-
like
You
where
all
my
have like
perspective-
the most amazing stories. Like I would have never
Yes.
guessed. Like never guessed.
But I think
either.
that's the thing. It's like if you live in a body where people read you one way, and then you basically get to be like, I'm going to watch you reassess all the assumptions you made about me.
Absolutely.
Right, right.
It really changes the way that you come at stories. And so I had this realization like fairly late where, there's this concept of being a third culture kid where you're growing up somewhere outside of like the realities of your family system in another place. And for me, I realized I was a third culture kid, but my third culture was isolation. And so in a lot of ways, I think I come at American culture from this perspective of sort of being like,
Watching it happen around you.
well, I kind of like parachuted in, like in some ways as a fairly fully formed adult without having really had access to it. And so I think that idea of, you show up as like an alien, not understanding customs, being like, how does this work?
Yeah.
That is how I move through the world, both as a person and as an artist and a writer. So I think that informs a lot of the tone that I take in trying to report on complex systems. Is I basically have this very odd family backstory that I think left me with a sort of unusual way of processing complex systems.
Which is useful to the rest of us who are reading.
Right.
Apparently.
Who are
Right.
looking.
It makes
Who
it
wanna know.
makes the information easy to digest.
Yeah,
In a
totally.
sense.
Right, like being able
None
to
of it's
call out, like,
easy.
here's what's important, here's what you should pay attention to. This
Right.
here has nuance and it's not clear, or even just being able, like, what I found the most compelling about your kind of your drawings or illustrations of what was going on was that you were more willing, and which is like not surprising, but most compelling is that you were willing to call out where it's like, this isn't like fact yet, or I don't know all of the details, or here's what I'm hearing, and I want to make sure that I'm sharing that accurately as I'm getting information. And what was like frustrating to me in comparison to like, I'm literally on Instagram, like getting news from a person who's literally drawing it by hand and sharing. Like that's like a labor of love in a space of itself. But then
Right.
it's like, I'm getting on like local news and trying to figure it out. And like, people are just saying shit that's not even real. Like actual reporters are saying shit that is like not true, not like unfounded. Like you haven't asked anybody. You haven't like, you know what I'm saying? Like you haven't qualified that to be factual, but you are putting this out into the space and people believe you because you are their news source. And it's like, how is an individual who this is not their job, like is somehow like more able or willing to say like, here is breaking news as it's developing. Like here's the information as it's coming, and being like willing to just say like, listen, we don't know. Here's what we're hearing. We're going to follow up. We're going to make sure you know what's real, what's not. And it's like, if regular humans like have the ability to do that, it's very frustrating that our like system doesn't do that. Right. Like,
yeah. And I feel like, and I said this in all of my posts, is Omari and the team at Converge Media deserve so much money and so many trophies and like every possible citizen journalism award out there, because I feel like what Omari and his team managed to do was precisely that, was to show an alternative to this flattened media landscape where things have to fall into artificial binaries. And he just went out there and was like, this is a story happening in real time. I'm not going to try and shape a narrative. I am just going to basically be a voice that you come to trust because you're coming along with me, who shows you this unfolding as I see it.
right. That's y'all. Okay.
Amazing.
You know what?
Amazing.
Now, I will say I'm watching our time. Not that I'm like in any rush, because I'm really not, because I'm like very intrigued by this conversation.
Oh yeah, we could literally talk
We
all
could do
night.
this all day. But I, since we're kind of talking about the chop, and I know both of you have some experience there, do either of y'all have insights like on the chop, and like what did you glean from that experience? It's obviously gone now, but like what did you see or learn that, you know, you might take with you into allyship in the future in other ways, like for Black Lives Matter or for Black folks in general? And thinking about like, did anything that you see or learn in the chop, which I would imagine would be, yes, change kind of your perspective, right? Or impact how you're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, I can move my mic up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as somebody who was not, I was in and out of CHOP a lot, and I think a lot of the organizers around the demands were to an extent, but there were people who were living at CHOP and on the ground and doing that type of very strategic work that gave organizers who were pushing demands and policy proposals and demanding the defund of police. Like, that's the thing, like this abolitionist type of language wasn't normal or possible even a couple months ago
At all.
to be at a place where we're calling for a defund of a police department by 50%, which no city has done so far.
It's insane.
/ funding alternative community viable solutions and demanding the freeing of protesters is, and for that to be like the normal rhetoric, not only with activists and organizers, but by elected officials, is pretty wild. And I'm the first one to admit, and other organizers are too, it's that type of leverage is not possible if it wasn't for the things happening at CHOP.
Right.
And as one of my co-organizers in DCRIM often says, it really is a credit to a diversity of tactics.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's from my perspective. Like, I think CHOP was good. It was needed. It was hard though, because it was in a location where a lot of Black and brown people have been pushed out a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so
I live 2 blocks away, actually. Like,
yeah.
Which is insane to see or hear from other people what the area used to look like.
Right.
Versus what it looks like now.
Yeah. And I bring that up mainly because, you know, I think as powerful as CHOP was, it wasn't the, I don't think it's a critique on the organizers there to say it is not this, it wasn't the safest place for everyone.
No, of course
you know,
not.
to be at. Capitol Hill, I mean, I'm half joking when I say this, like when I was at CHOP, it was sometimes hard to tell the difference between like a white dude, hipster CHOP person, and like a rumored Proud Boy coming to it.
Bro, you don't know. That's what's crazy. You don't know.
There.
With or without CHOP, you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you're on a normal
Seattle.
day
On
on
a
the
regular
hill.
day, walking down the street
Right.
trying to go
It's
get
Seattle.
some,
Can we
cupcake
just-
Royale.
can we
I don't
just-
know.
Can we just please like all agree that white dudes should never wear red hats ever again?
Bro,
even though it's not a
please.
MAGA hat.
Please.
Just to be
Even
safe.
if it's not a MAGA hat.
I be seeing it from a mile away, like, so
I'd be
I gotta
like,
slap the
bruh.
shit out of you when I come
Right.
up. Okay,
Right,
cool.
I'm like, I
And then
seen
I'm
one with a
pleasantly
brown MAGA hat on,
surprised, like-
so it was
Oh, a
live.
brown MAGA hat?
Yeah, I saw it. It was like
Ooh.
limited edition. I was
You
like,
sure it
oh,
wasn't-
limited
Oh, I was
edition.
like, where'd you
You
get
sure it
it?
wasn't just like faded?
Oh, I don't know. I don't
Limited
know.
edition bigotry.
It's limited
Okay.
edition. I was like, where would you get it? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's just crazy because you get like it and I have had conversations with one of my closest friends, my cousin Terrell. He is an avid listener, and I know he's listening right now, so I'm speaking directly to him. But I got in a conversation with him and my other good guy friend talking about symbols and thinking about why there's something to be said about the MAGA hat itself and how it is very quickly or very rapidly became something akin to a swastika, and understanding that there are people
Right.
who maybe were like pro Donald Trump for economic reasons, or were not aligned to any of like, you know, all the racist, xenophobic things that he's saying, but very quickly that became synonymous. And at this point, you can no longer wear that hat and not be championing that all the negative things, right? Like if you are wearing that hat, you know what it means, and you're actively choosing whether or
Right.
not you're aligned with it. You're actively choosing to wear a symbol that indicates hate, no matter who you are, whether or not you believe it. But you wearing it, like you're asking for problems. A symbol is
Right.
not what it used to be. It now is a symbol of hate, whether you like it or not.
Well, it's so interesting how that's kind of unfolding in real time, where you see the same thing with a Confederate flag. And
All of a
there's
sudden, like it's
a
brand
lot
new.
of a demographic,
Right.
you know, the Venn diagram of overlap of like MAGA hats and Confederate flag, you know, this is our heritage.
Y'all lost. I like,
Who's
don't understand
heritage?
it. Like y'all lost. That's what's crazy to me about the Confederate flag. Y'all are so fucking happy to carry this L around. Y'all lost. Why are y'all so proud to show that y'all lost? Y'all tried to secede from the Union and you got your asses whooped. But somehow
Right.
we gonna hold on to this flag that shows like we took an ass whooping. Like I don't like what is the heritage of the loss? Like just let it rock. You didn't win.
Because it's there. I agree. It's a huge ass L and it's hilarious. And at the same time, I think for them, it's like a symbol that their team, their losing team, is still trying to win.
Absolutely.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's still a thing, and they're trying to find some type of sick, bigoted redemption. You know,
And they work on it actively.
Yeah.
They
Every
lone wolf.
day.
They wade to it every day.
I
Yeah.
definitely was about to get a red hat, not a MAGA hat, but then I got scared because
Because you,
like, no.
See,
you can't
you
even
can.
take it.
They
You can't
took
even
it.
do it.
because it was gonna say something very inappropriate.
Oh,
It
tell
was
us.
like-
What was it
gonna
gonna say?
It was gonna say "Make women come again." And
Hey.
Hey.
I
I
support
was
that.
like, but I was like, it was a great message, but it's like people from afar. I'm not trying to get my ass whipped by
Yeah,
another black
yeah.
person.
Just get it in
Yeah.
black. Get it in black. Get it in black.
That only had it in red.
God damn it.
No,
damn
see-
it.
there's a reason why the first thing Kanye had to do when he announced his presidency was
Denounce
say,
the fucking MAGA hat.
exactly, because he knew
had to
knew
burn that shit.
those pictures are never going away.
Of course not. It is literally
So
a symbol
stupid.
of hate. There is nothing that you can tell me
Yeah.
about your political beliefs. And I talk
Yeah.
about it all the time, even at work, because I, work in diversity in the workplace and having to explain to people like, yes, I'm actually of the camp that believes we should be able to talk about politics at work. I think that we have to, because the way that our society has moved, it's no longer like the days of the 70s, 80s where politics had to do with actual economics, right? Or like you can decide on less taxation or more taxation, right? Like you can argue about states' rights and like anti-communism, whatever these people were
Right.
thinking about, right? But things that were not about like active human rights for individuals here. And there's a difference about like, we should be able to talk about politics because now politics involves our identity as an individual. And I have to remind people all the time, like, yes, I'm pro talking about politics, but remember that it's a very thin line. Like your political affiliation is not protected by the Constitution, and your ass will get fired very quickly, right? Like when your
Right.
language shifts from I'm for states' rights, and even though that's a very like shielded, very racist perspective that people use often to talk about race without saying it, but like the minute you start talking about like talking about immigration or talking about black folks or talking about like all of a sudden it gets very tricky, right? Like you
Yeah,
can't,
don't get stupid with
right?
it.
Like don't
Yeah.
act like you don't know, right? These things are not bipartisan. They're human rights issues, but we've somehow made them bipartisan issues when they shouldn't be. And that is a very dangerous space to be in, which is what probably gives me the most anxiety about what we're seeing is this, kind of partisanship around things that should be rocket science, right? Like police accountability shouldn't be a partisan issue. Like guilty people shouldn't die either. Like whether it's innocent people or guilty people, like you shouldn't die on the street for something that you should go to prison for, or like a jury of your peers should determine if you're guilty for. Like
Yeah.
that should be bipartisan, but somehow we have created this gross political amalgamation of things that aren't
Come
true
on,
or
amalgamation.
factual.
That was a word?
Yeah, I'm like,
Gefilte fish?
come
That
on.
was a word.
Right. I'm trying to
Big
figure
ass
out
word. I was like, dog.
I couldn't think of I'm just literally actually visualizing this actual just clusterfuck of shit that shouldn't be partisan.
There we go.
That
Break it
We
down.
could call it an
Is-
entanglement.
It's
is
definitely an entanglement.
of shit
It
that it
literally
shouldn't be
is.
entangled
It's-
with. It's
honestly-
it's not rocket science, right?
But I feel like the day that bastard got elected, the whole idea of talking about politics in the workplace
Had to be done
We're
so.
talking about it. I was like, wait, I thought we were supposed to be talking about this. I'm going to my desk.
right, but now we
Like,
have to.
we're
Now we
talking about
have
it,
to.
yeah.
Have to.
That's actually it's a segue, but it's related.
Totally. Come on, segue.
Yeah.
Segue.
Yeah. We like to
I-
say.
I've been really, really fascinated by all the conversation around the New York Times op-ed around Senator Cotton and Send in the Troops.
Yes.
And I just listened to one of the most amazing interviews I've ever heard with Dean Baquet, the executive editor of the New York Times.
Okay, I was like,
so,
I don't know who that is.
So
but
he's a
good to
black
know.
editor, and he says
I should
in
have
this
known that.
interview, in the long form long form podcast, which is just journalists dorking out about writing and ethics and craft. I love it.
Cute.
But he talks about the fact that there have been
that out.
2 major newspapers that have had black executive editors, and he has been both of them. So he's basically
Damn.
and
He's the only person.
well, and so he was talking about the fact that there's this revolution going on in journalism led by young black journalists, and how he's someone who grew up in New Orleans, and
Wow.
he's having these conversations with these young black journalists that he's hired at the New York Times, and the nuance is incredible.
Come on, nuance.
But he's talking about the fact that they can't write him off as not having experienced the things that they've experienced, but at the same time also feeling a huge sense of responsibility to the fact that they, as young black voices, haven't necessarily felt fostered.
Yeah.
And just everyone should go listen to that conversation. It's
Okay,
incredible.
Well, we're gonna make sure that you share the link.
Yes.
We'll
Yes.
share the link
Yeah,
with
share
y'all.
links. Yeah, for
Because
sure.
now I want
and
to
it's
know.
it's nice and long. It's like an hour and a half. He gets into
Nice
it.
little
Ooh,
podcast.
I'm
Okay,
into
well,
it.
you listen to it after y'all listen to ours. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. You heard it here first.
What were you gonna say, Tay? You looked like you was getting the mic
no,
ready.
No, I just more about the red hat, but
No, you can talk about the
Let's
red
go.
hat for
Yeah,
a second.
let's
You
get
know,
into
I
it.
mean,
I'm glad you didn't buy the red hat.
Yeah, me too. I thought about it. I was like, I usually do some risque things.
she sure do.
But
That's
not,
one that we
that's not
can't.
a
You
thing.
can't.
No, I can't have that because if I get accosted by somebody
Girl.
because I'm
Now
wearing
I
this
gotta
hat,
fight because somebody
it's
want to
a
fight
lot
you.
to take in. And red's not even my color, so
Well, so it's I want to actually ask you about the what you mentioned around being political in the workplace.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I agree. I think Trump's election and his whatever the hell he's doing right now
Because it ain't presidency, but yes.
he just
and
had no time.
enable that type of I guess I mean especially in Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of times I forget that there's a lot of shit, racism, a lot of isms going on in Seattle, 100%. But yeah, I can't deny we're also in a at least pseudo progressive bubble.
Yes.
Right? You
Yes.
drive, just a couple hours east, and it's a
something
whole
completely
different
different.
ballgame.
Oh man,
Completely
I was in
different on the
Tulalip
east
and we
side.
were about to go get some breakfast or lunch or whatever.
Yeah.
He was
We
looking at
pulled
you
up. I
crazy.
was like, "What the fuck? What is this?" I was like, "East Bubble fuck." I was like,
Cracker
"Yo,
Barrel.
I feel like I need to have like a gun, but like with a revolver, like a dusty revolver, and just come in there."
You're in
like,
Westworld.
Yeah, I came to get some chicken and waffles. Like, it was a lot. But I'm glad we didn't go in there because my bro had on a Black Lives Matter shirt. I was like, I don't
Oh,
think we
nah,
wanna-
they not ready.
I don't think they're gonna let us get fries to go, man. Slot.
Okay, no, sorry. Continue.
No. I
Politics in
mean,
the
well, that's the
workplace.
thing, though. It's like I have always been someone who, and it's gotten me in trouble a lot, talked about political things and maybe in places that people say that you're not supposed to. At the same time, it's like we know that the organizers who are fighting for prison abolition, who's fighting to abolish ICE, things like that, would have had to been on the street even if Clinton got nominated. And by no means am I saying that Trump was just as bad as anybody else. I think
No,
we got
he's the worst.
I think we got the
possible.
devil himself.
Yeah.
Right.
At the same time, I'm curious to see how much of this political climate, and especially this past month of protest and kind of normalizing a lot of this abolitionist talk, as I mentioned earlier, will or will not continue if whether or not Trump wins in November or not.
I hope that it does. I personally am, as a person who also gets in trouble for talking about shit that they say I'm not supposed to talk about, but I'm finna talk about it because y'all not gonna fire me as the only black person in this bitch. I'm waiting for y'all. Y'all can't do it. So like, and we don't edit. I've had many a boss listen to my podcast, like avid listeners of this podcast to this day, talking all this like talk. So I feel very confident, fine talking about what I'm talking about. But like, I think that as a person who's grown up, like also in an, a first generation immigrant with parents and a dad particularly who is very political, and just based on the fact that was kind of put on him when he got here, right? Like I'm from Barbados, everybody's black, and my parents got here in the 80s to New York, to Brooklyn in the height of like, what did they call them? Super predators. And all of a sudden it was like, oh no, you black, and this is what it means to be here, right? Understanding a different fear of identity that you didn't have. And so my dad is like very Million Man March and made sure my sister and I are also about that action. And so I like have that perspective. And I think even learning everything that I've learned, everything my parents have taught me, everything I've learned on my own through school, all of that, right? I think that we're in a space that I have never seen or felt as many white folks, even whether or not their opinions are right, wrong, but paying attention in a way that people have not been paying attention before, right? Or like actively wanting to learn or educate, even if they are making mistakes by asking black folks to educate them from scratch, right? But the fact is their brains are turned on to shit that they have been socialized to not notice or not know, right? Race is something that white people are taught that other people have, that they don't have it. And so it is not a perspective that white folks have. And so I think the language or just the energy that we're seeing, even in the workplace, right? People wanting to talk about things, wanting to fight and push for having a safe space, and wanting to hold companies more accountable, which is also why I do the work that I do, because I'm very, very involved or invested in creating inclusive workplaces in a way that is actually meaningful and that isn't just lip service. And I think that is a shift that I'm very excited about, because you can't unring the bell now. And I think that that's what it's about, is like, hopefully we get a different president. I'm personally not convinced that we will, because white people are white people, and I have very minimal faith, and that's my own personal.
We see what happened last
time.
Right,
like we saw what happened, and I thought last time that we would get Trump, and we did. So like, I'm like not necessarily thinking positively. But like, and you're right. I don't think that it would be different if we had Hillary Clinton as a president, right? Because we know also the kind of things that her and Bill Clinton also did, right? They are responsible. Bill Clinton specifically is responsible for why mass incarceration looks like it does right now, right? It's his own policy. So I don't think that having a Democrat means anything different, because race is race. Race relations in the United States has been manufactured and constructed to do exactly what it's doing now. It is not misoperating. It is operating to its fullest capacity as it was intended to do so. And so I think that it's cluing people into the fact that like, oh, this shit is not an accident, right? Or like learning like, no, people like made sure that this shit happens, right? Or like understanding that, like, I think more white people, I guess what I'm trying to say, are learning that what we already know, right? Like what we already are like actively, intimately tied to in our personal experience and our professional experiences. We carry that weight with us from our parents, from everything around us, we're socialized to understand about our identities and what that means here. And white people are like, oh shit, like y'all not playing, y'all wasn't complaining, y'all wasn't just bullshitting, y'all wasn't just, like speculating and making everything about race. It's like, no, everything is about race, and they can see it. So I think that hopefully, no matter who's president, like we can't undo what Chop did. We can't ring what's happening. We've already seen too much.
Yeah, you just said exactly what I wanted to bring up, is that what I think is different is that for the first time, white people are actually believing Black and Indigenous voices.
Like, hello, we've been trying to tell y'all.
Yeah. And that's something, I do actually, being in CHOP, going back to your earlier question, if anything is different after that, I'm not sure I believe in the concept of truth anymore. It's been a lot to take in. But there were some really heartening things that I saw happen there. And one of them is the notion that the whole idea of using your physical white privilege to protect Black bodies. I saw that actually happening frequently and organically, where the main hecklers that were coming in, particularly in the first, I would say, week and a half, were these Christian protesters who had like this big speaker and this huge sign, and they would come through just disrupting over and over again. And it got to the point.
Disgusting.
Well, when they would come in,
Using God to do that too makes me mad, but we'll
like
digress.
seriously, like.
Yeah, it was a lot. But what started happening is when they would show up, immediately the white bodies would go and they would just form a line. And
You're not welcome.
Yeah, the people of color would not have to deal with it. It would just be white allies surrounding them and escorting them sometimes blocks away. And that to me was the first time that I'd ever actually sort of seen that as being not just a sort of like hashtag I'll put my body before yours, but like
no, I'm doing that.
Yeah. And also the number of people who I saw with notebooks taking notes who didn't seem like reporters. And personally, what makes me feel like, oh my God, was looking at the New York Times bestseller list in the past month and seeing the number of Black authors. And like that to me, I mean, obviously, like I'm a bibliophile. I love books. I'm a research dork. But looking at that snapshot of the sort of attention that white people are paying, not just to the idea of how to be anti-racist, but also like actually trying to look at Black and Indigenous culture and actually, you know, uncolonize their minds. I've never sort of seen that.
Right. Colonizers, we don't need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's heartening. It does. It makes me feel hope.
Right. Slow moving. It's a marathon, not a race, but like it's moving in the way that we have wanted it to move, that our, you know, ancestors have wanted it to move in a space that, you know, there have been a lot of complicit white folks, right? You know, there are people who are like obviously like not down for the hate, but not willing to say anything, right? Not willing to make themselves uncomfortable, not willing to put something on the line. And I think people are willing to do that more and more.
Yeah, and I think it's really exhaustive too. Even though I do see good things, I'm also just like, okay, great. You know what I mean? Because
I'm not giving you a pat on the back for the shit that you should have been doing.
I think for me, like I used to be like really, really involved with protests, like Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, everything that would go on. And like there was a part of me that started to lose hope. Like after those trials were over, I was just like, I'm not doing this shit anymore, because what are we marching for? We're not marching for anything, you know? And obviously right now is a different time. And just feeling like there's more change that is occurring. But I think just the whole thing is just so overwhelming. Like, you know, if you're not at the protest, you're getting asked about the protest. Then at work, it's like, oh man, let's talk this
what can I do?
through.
Like, no, I want to talk to you. Let's talk
this through. And then it's just kind of like, it's kind of hard to like talk it through, you know, with like folks that don't understand my experience, you know? So it's like, I think for me, I kind of shut down during a lot of this in terms of like talking about it with like coworkers and stuff like that.
And you don't have to.
I wasn't getting the most support either. So I was just like, I'm not talking to you motherfuckers about it.
You gotta at least pay the fee, the consulting fee.
Right, seriously.
You want my
are you going to pay for my therapist after we have this conversation?
My cash
like, seriously.
Hello. That's just crazy.
It's a lot.
Also, like thinking about the fact that like only one state, shout out to Colorado, you know what I'm saying, is the only state that has changed their laws around qualified immunity. It's like so to your point, right? We are marching to obviously disrupt and make people uncomfortable. There is like a tactical reason for why like we like civil disobedience. There is a reason for it, but then I can absolutely understand what you're saying when it's like, well, what is actually happening? Or like they pass a law in Kentucky, right? The Breonna Taylor law to get rid of no-knock warrants, but like you haven't arrested her murderer. So it's like, sure, thanks for putting a law in her name, but also like not bringing justice to the person that was murdered, right? Like, so what exactly are we hoping? What is changing, or things that are moving so slowly when it's like it's not rocket science, like. Qualified immunity, getting rid of it would mean that we could actually prosecute murderers, right? Like that, like it's really 1 + 1 = 2. Like it's not hard. So like, why are you not doing it?
Yeah,
like, that's it. Let's start there.
5 is 10. What the fuck is this?
Yeah, and I think the people power and normalizing that has been something that's happened through CHOP and also the movements across the country. Is that, to your point, it's like if you want to push for these changes, I think people are now realizing that it has to come from the ground up. Yeah. Like no one, at least in my circles, was going through all these protests and demanding for these changes and also being like, by the way, like Biden's campaign. You know what I mean? Like no one was like, oh
like,
yeah.
That's where you should be though.
We gotta, don't get me wrong, like, and I get it. I understand the need to vote out Trump. But at the same time, I think people are starting to learn how much power fighting within your local communities can actually amount to. It is the most
important piece.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is what people mean by empowering grassroots movements, is that's how you get the police defunded. You know, that's how you start lifting up different communities that have been siloed or oppressed for this amount of time. And I think that's the part that I'm most excited for and thankful for Chop and other people who are on the ground, is that we can do all this like national stuff, but if it's not happening from within our neighborhoods, then that's how I think white people and people with a lot of money and financial capital have been getting away with those. That's the reason why historically those are the ones who go to these neighborhood meetings, right?
Yeah, because they got time, they got money, they got a job. You could leave and go vote.
And strategically,
and talk to people,
they know that that's how they're gonna protect their zoning laws or their taxes. I mean,
no shelters being built in my neighborhood.
Exactly. And like, it's no coincidence that like cities like Seattle is so blue and so on paper progressive, but all the billionaires live here because they have this is where their wealth has been protected
without question.
Right.
I have did you want to say something?
Oh, well, it just, I think it's important in this conversation to talk about the fact that the formation of CHOP and the volume and level of personal investment and attention that happened around this protest movement, it's only because of COVID, because capitalism is temporarily on hold.
Yeah, that's real.
And so this idea where before, it was really only the wealthy elite who could like take a break from gardening to go to a council meeting. Right. Like now it's like, everyone can go. So, and also, at least for me, it brings me joy that, a lot of the people who are receiving the $600 a month from the federal government, it's like they are paying you to be able to organize to tear this shit down.
Right.
Yeah. They don't even know it.
Yeah. And so it's been a really interesting parallel experiment where in some ways we're actually seeing what a universal basic income might do for political organizing. And
which I would so be here for.
Yeah.
Cut me my check,
CHOP
please.
never would have happened if not for COVID. Never.
That's real. People would have been at work. Like, how would I do that? Or what would these protests look like? How would these daily protests look if everybody was at their regular job, clocking in and clocking out?
Right. I think my job only gave us like one day or something like that. You could take the day off or something to protest. And I was like, cute. But I do want to touch on a couple of heavy topics. I do want to talk about anti-black.
That was what I was going to
the Asian community
let's
and
get
black
to
people.
it.
But right before we talk about that, I do want to know everyone's opinions on. We talked last week about the recent tragedies that happened in within the protest with Summer Taylor, and I forget who the other person's name was.
Shoot.
Lorenzo Anderson was the 19-year-old, and the 16-year-old. Oh, I'm blanking on his name. I'm sorry.
I could look on your Instagram and see what you told us, Tessa.
Yeah, it was. They were the ones that were hit by the by the car during the protest, and so.
Oh, sorry, that was Diaz Love was the other person who was hit.
Diaz Love. Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
there we go. And I haven't checked on the updates of how that person is doing, but so we do know that we did lose Summer Taylor. And so then I was on Instagram a few nights ago, and in my Instagram, the first thing that pops up is a GoFundMe for the person that actually hit them, and I'm blanking on his name right now. And so when I saw it, because there was a lot of people like that I know that were posting this, and I was like, wait, what are you guys doing? And so I had to process it for a second, and my opinions are a little different on it, but I want to know what everyone else thinks about that. Like, GoFundMe eventually took it down about that person, and so
I was trying to find
I don't know what everyone's thoughts
what his
are.
name was, the driver. Yeah, okay, I was like, I don't think you did, but I can't remember. What was his name?
Duit Colette?
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. So there was a GoFundMe floating around
for him to raise funds for his legal
legal aid.
Yeah,
and I bet you I could guess who started that GoFundMe.
Probably, I think it was his family.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess that's my own personal bias, right? My immediate instinct was like, who are these probably like white supremacists who are like encouraging that behavior?
the red hats.
Right, the red hats. That's my personal instinct. So that is probably 100% my own personal bias. That was like,
because I think we still haven't like talked about or got to like why
the motivation.
Yeah, was the motivation, or was it like was it an accident?
I feel mixed feelings about that, right? If it started by the family, I can understand, right? Like, I could understand the fact, like, we don't know what his like home life is like, so they might not be able to afford like legal counsel for this person, right? You love your family member no matter what they do. If it's your family member, you are inclined to, ride for them however you can. I think I find it to be a little distasteful to look for public support in such an open way like that on a GoFundMe when it's like, but your child is also responsible for murdering a person, right? Like for disrupting the public in a space that like it's hard to justify why you should get public funds for an act that like literally took lives from others and destroyed some other. It's hard to damage the public and then ask the public to pay for the person who did that.
Yeah, I think if you're that family or whoever, and I can understand like the family element, but if you're consciously putting out a GoFundMe knowing what the narrative out there is, whether you believe it or not, you know the type of people who are going to donate to
money.
your cause, you know, and for you to be willing to extract money from that demographic, I mean, immediately people were going on his Instagram really like disgusting white supremacist people congratulating him for a job well done. Ugh. Knowing that's his base, whether intentional or not,
right,
is something that they know they're tapping into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's why it's hard because it's like, but you also know she can't pay for you want to pay for your brother.
But then there's also a piece too. We've seen GoFundMe let a lot of fucked up campaigns rock
for
racist ass people that have done egregious things as well. So there's another element to that too. Because I did feel a tough way when I saw it, but
yeah, I'm curious in the description of the narrative because I took a week-long break from the internet, which was lovely.
Well
so
deserved.
I'm not up on. I'm assuming his motivations are still unknown. He's still he's claiming it's an accident.
I guess it was an accident. He wasn't under the influence.
Which again, I talked about last week how there was no possible fucking way that could be an accident based on the way they were shutting the streets down. Like no possible way that was an accident, but okay.
If he was under the influence, that's like I feel like that would help his.
It would.
Yeah.
It would because
when
there's
I
no
found
way
out, I was like,
you're sober.
so he had nothing in his system. All right.
Yeah, I mean it's so strange because we don't know all the facts and
because people were saying there was parts of it that were blocked off by cars too.
Yeah,
some of the barricades were like
police
I don't know
cars actively
or were they all police cars?
A lot of the cars that I saw, at least like. Because the protests were happening multiple nights in a row. And the one night that I left, I talked about like from the studio trying to go home. And like the way that it was blocked off was like for miles, you could see the street like closing, right? Like down to the right lane. So you could see like the cones were closing off lane by lane by lane. And then when you got closer to the ramp where they were forcing people off of the highway, there was police cars like blocking sideways or police cars on like the additional ramps. Like, so in the event that you like got closer and thought like, oh, I could go on here, because there was at one point where I was like, oh, I could actually get off on, what is the one near the CD where it's like Massachusetts, I can't think, but what the exit is. But anyway, I was like, oh, maybe I could go here. And so, but by the time I got to the ramp, then I saw like, oh, there's a police car there. Like this exit is also closed. Like there are strategically placed like police cars, barricades, cones, like even the fancy fucking lighted signs that show you like what lanes are closed with the X's. Like if you are sober, there is no possible way that you could have pulled up and been like, maybe I could drive down here.
Well, I mean, the car was going the wrong way, right?
He went he came up an off ramp. Yeah, so
yeah, he's going the wrong way and going at a speed for the freeway. So
again,
and it's interesting too, where if you look at the footage after it happens, he initially stops and people go to the car and he doesn't get out and then he takes off again, and it's just. I mean, it's sort of tied into all of the tragic deaths that happened around CHOP. I think. We all want answers, but I honestly don't think we're ever going to get clarity because of, the police basically didn't investigate. Of course, the police hate everything about CHOP with a vehement passion, so they're not going to look into it.
They're not inclined.
And it's just such a tragedy because, the people who died were 19, 16, and 24. Those were very, very young lives. Yeah. And especially in the case of the 16-year-old, there it's, like usually you start to hear all of the 18 different versions of things and you start to get a sense of, okay, this is the most likely scenario of what happened. And on that one, people are still being really closed-lipped, and I don't know that we're ever really going to get a clear answer on what went down on some of the shootings there. And
all of that stuff is real sketch.
Yes,
real sketch.
It all is.
All of a sudden, like people are in here trying to fight for change and fight for peace, and all of a sudden it becomes violent.
but not by anybody visibly, like part
like
of
in
CHOP.
part
right?
of it. Like it's
very
like
interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen Scandal. Don't put anything past anybody.
B613.
Come on.
Yeah, well, and talking about kind of like summaries of what was CHOP and what was that experience, I feel like basically what happened is we got to see like a real-time microcosm of all the failures of the social contract.
Yes.
So you have this space that becomes an experiment in mutual aid, and everyone is asking, the ask to defund the police. You get the half of it where the vacuum is created, but none of the community support systems that you're asking for come in instead. And so you see this space basically rapidly gentrify and become Coachella. Then they put in the barriers and like becomes a farmer's market. And then all of the problems of society writ large start to come in, and it becomes violent. You have untreated mental health crises, and you get to see basically an entire community blossom and die in the space of 3 weeks, ending in violent clearance by the police. And
Great.
like,
With
well, that
their
was just
little
quick. It was just a
stupid-ass
fast forward.
puffy bikes.
And just like
They were
imitates
like
exactly what happens
puffy
in real
bikes.
life. That's actually really interesting because that's actually like very factual, right? Like all the things that we need that are unaddressed occur. Like a space gets gentrified, pushes out people that were there for a real reason, right? Like things that we are asking society to support us with, they aren't or aren't supported obviously in a in dynamic autonomous space, and like the same failures occur. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, so let's you take
talk
it up.
about
Let's
anti-blackness
in the heat. Okay, so these are my things. I just let them out because
let it out, girl. Free your soul.
First of all, I have a big thing and I say it very loudly.
Come on,
I
loud.
do not consider myself a person of color
At all.
I am a black woman
Without
and that is
question.
in black because of the
Big B.
anti-blackness that takes place in the other people of color communities.
And every single one.
Every
No one
single
is
one.
exempt.
Everyone.
Every single
because it feels like for black people, it's like we get treated like shit by all groups, and then we're supposed to
show up for everybody.
show up for everybody else. As somebody that I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, and for me, I grew up in a very diverse place. Like everybody was there. Everybody with the Samoans over there, got the Asian people over here, you got the white people over here, and all of us just, connect at some point. It works. Seattle showed me a different world. Like Seattle and going to mostly white art school showed me a totally different world. I was like, okay, I'm the only
we
one
don't
here.
mix and mingle here.
Interesting.
Okay.
And so growing up, there was always different, there was shops, there was the hair store, there's different eateries that are owned by Asian folks.
Come on, eateries.
And eateries and things like that. But their baseline customers
are
majority black people. We love all sorts of
fried
Asian
rice?
cuisine, everything, all those things, whatever.
We
love
pho.
those things. The beauty supplies, obviously, we go in there. You see my hair?
Hella Korean.
I went to Western Beauty Supply and got my. Actually, no, I didn't. I'm lying.
Oh, I
supported
Western.
my. I got my accessories from Western Beauty Supply, but I supported my braider, Seattle African braids, and I bought hair from her. But I found in all of those spaces what I could never understand is how, in those spaces where black people are the majority of your customers, you treat us like shit or treat us like we're going to steal or whatever. Like even growing up, it was like all of the Asian kids were very very black adjacent. We all did the same things. It was like low riders and everybody wearing baggy pants. Like it was all black adjacent. It was all the thing. And and then there were Asian people that were saying nigga, and there are people that I have grown up with that
please.
You know what I'm saying, that I went to college with, that I would see on Facebook, and I'd be like, so last time I checked, you were totally like Filipino, Cambodian. Why are you saying nigga? I don't get it. Right. I don't understand. I just don't. So I think that's my little.
But we'll also do all of that, but then be silent, right? Like,
but then don't
be
say
silent.
anything.
That I feel like that is what's the most disrespectful. Is like it is one thing because I think black culture is the dominant social culture of our entire nation. Period. Black culture indicates all trends. Black culture is what everybody else steals to be trendy, whether it's music, food, all of the things, right? Every kind of fusion food is always like something mixed with soul food. Like black culture is the baseline culture, which I don't think anybody anywhere would dispute unless you are, of a different camp. But in general, like that's like where we're at. And so I think what it is like there isn't a problem for me personally with other cultures adopting portions of black culture because it is like Black culture is pop culture. So it's very difficult to be like, but you shouldn't wear this or like you shouldn't do that because it's like, well, it's trendy. So like if I want to be like trendy and cool and I'm paying attention to shit like
FUBU.
like it's Black. So like what am I like what are you gonna do? I think when it gets aggressively offensive is then how somehow folks and we're talking about Asian American folks, so I'll just put it there. But is when we have Asian American folks somehow have this cognitive dissonance between everything your life is about and then be like, but fuck niggas though. You gonna say nigga and then turn your back tomorrow when some shit pop off when it's like, aren't you wearing Yeezys right now? Like, weren't you just rapping? Like, I'm not understanding in how you are, connecting yourself so heavily to the culture. And then if people challenge you, you'll say, well, that's where I grew up and that's how I feel. Right. But won't show up.
Yeah, I have a friend that will get on my head about where I get my nails done. Like, and I saw an incident last week where a Black woman had an appointment at a nail salon. Yes. And this white lady walks in and they're like, well, we can't take you right now, whatever. She's like, no, I'm not. Like, she was refusing to leave, whatever. And she was going to leave. And then they sat her down and started doing her appointment. And the Black lady sitting there like, so
I made an appointment and I'm fucking standing here.
Yeah, so like my appointment doesn't matter. I would have burnt that bitch to the ground. And then the manager was like, well, you need to wait. And I was just like, or you need to be more patient. So she got up and left. Nobody even cared. But then I was like, when I saw that, I was like, you know what? I see that all the time. Right. You see it happen. It's just like, you are so afraid for this lily white woman to leave, versus me that's sitting here and I'm about to pay you.
Right. And I'm probably a regular customer.
Yeah. A regular customer. I'm about to throw you a few dollars on a tip if you do it right. You know what I'm saying? And like, for me, I'm like, why, in my experience, it's like you are so after the white gaze that you would just like put me to the back as like I'm not here as your customer.
Same reason everybody else does, but I'm gonna be quiet.
Yeah, I'm not anybody trying to please white people, but I'm be quiet. Yes. Y'all go ahead. What y'all think?
I could answer the question myself. Yeah, and obviously we know that it's very general, so by no means are we saying like speak for like all Asian American folks, especially when like there's a billion Asian countries in the first place. So like by no means are we making the statement that like it's a monolith, just like Black folks are not a monolith, but share your perspective rather on how that occurs. And I hope everybody listening knows that it's based on historical context and socialization and colonization, and that's how we get that. And I didn't break
down all the different cultures that I've encountered, so I apologize. But I don't know what everybody is, so it's a lot. I can't do it. So I don't want to like give misreference people.
Yes, so there you go. We don't assume.
Yeah, I think it's good to recognize, but also it's very fair to kind of call out anti-Blackness within Asian cultures in general. Mm-hmm. I mean, even within Asian cultures, you have East Asians and South Asians and Southeast Asians. And although they all perpetuate anti-Blackness, there's anti-Blackness within those communities and colorism going on, of course.
Just like our own right here.
Yep. And so, going back to what I was saying earlier about like this desire, you explained it as like the white gaze, which is exactly what it is, this desire to go after the American dream. Mm-hmm. And I think when immigrants and refugees having their own stories and them being very valid and kind of fleeing and escaping to seek like a better life or whatever you want to call it, coming to America and coming to a country where the baseline of success is dictated by white supremacy historically, and being told that, hey, if you as a minority want to thrive in this country, the best thing you can do is be as white adjacent as possible, and not be like the Black community. And it's something that Asian elders, we need to continue to push to unlearn a lot of those things. And there's a lot of built-in racism, and you see white supremacy happen in imperialism all over the world, right?
Yes.
And so I think when you nailed it, like a lot of younger generation Asian Americans who love Black culture, because that is the popular culture, but hate Black people, is a very, very real thing, and they've inherited through generations when you're being told like, hey, you can have any friends you want except Black people. You can
date anybody you want except them.
Exactly. And so but like you said, they're wearing J's, they're wearing Yeezys,
drinking Henny and calling us niggas.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, dude,
take it.
Like I thought we were supposed to be
friends
here.
Yeah. At least white people, you know when you're listening to the country music coming out of their Ford truck.
Right, what you
Like,
finna get.
it's
You
like-
know
Very
what you finna
specific
get.
blue Ford truck.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, blue.
Yeah.
It's hard because I'm from Hawaii and we love trucks.
Hey.
And so when I came up here, and the only type of person that drives a truck here is somebody I'm pretty scared of.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of trucks, depending on where you're at in Washington, trucks are not always a good thing.
No. And
It's
you try
not.
buying a truck, oh my God.
Why? They be looking at you crazy?
There's only one type of person selling a truck. It's the people that's driving a truck over
Oh,
here.
that's
Oh,
crazy.
yeah,
You're right.
yup,
You know what?
yeah.
You know what? That
Yeah,
make a
you
lot
better
of sense.
get you a little Ford Focus.
But with Asian people, they're listening to black music.
Yep.
They're using the black rhetoric, whatever slang or whatever you want to call it, and they're not standing up, especially during a time where it's very obvious
Right.
what side of history you want to be on.
Mm-hmm.
Is really historically, at least, aligned with generational anti-blackness you see happen from like the beginning of immigration in this country
Right.
through the refugee story, which is a very real story, and I don't want to take away, but at the same time, it's this model minority myth that Asians unfortunately are continuing to cling on to, not realizing that there's never going to be full liberation for any non-white communities until there's liberation for black people.
Period. Like, they gonna get you too. Hello. They will use you as a scapegoat. It
And
will
when
be
we
you.
understand that.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
goodness.
But while benefiting through a lot of like white supremacist rewards,
Yeah.
and taking advantage of the average income in Asian communities in Seattle is tremendously higher than the black community.
And higher than white people
Yeah,
often
because
Yeah.
too.
there's a lot of ownership that takes place, and it's very smart the way like the Asian communities are building, like in Seattle, owning multiple places and putting each other on and things like that. So I respect it.
Yeah, and I think in Asian communities, because so many of them have defined themselves around being the white adjacent model minority,
Yeah,
they
model
have the mobility to sort of code switch and pick and choose as to where they're seen, between white or being put within the communities of color. And I think that's what the conversation that's happening now. When you first reached out to me about this podcast, I was like, oh, I've been having some really interesting conversations about this.
Love it.
Where the Asian American community, I think for the most part, the younger generation, or at least the people that I know, are handling it fairly well. But basically, like, my own position is that for all intents and purposes during this movement, I am white. I am in the same camp as white people. Like, this is a black struggle, and we as Asian allies need to basically be like, you know what? Right now, we're basically white, and
Right.
we need to approach what we're doing from that stance of like, this is not about us, and we just need to shut up and support how we can. And I know, at least for me, in some of the conversations that I've been having, there is this huge generation gap, and like, having to really go back and be like, okay, this is step one. This is where we're starting from in terms of having these conversations, where in some ways, because it has been so siloed and so embargoed, it's like pretty astonishing, like how basic facts and basic pieces of knowledge aren't conveyed. So, okay, I'll give you an anecdote. This was 2 weeks ago. So my partner's black, and this has been an interesting experience talking to my mom because, town of 350, like she doesn't have black friends. She's not exposed to black culture. And so I got to explain to my mother 2 weeks ago about touching black people's hair. And
Interesting.
it was the first she'd heard of it. I was like, well,
Happens all
Mom,
the time.
okay, like we're going
Right.
to talk about this thing that happens. And I think that's
That's so funny.
on some level, like that's where the discourse is within the
Right.
older generation of Asian American communities. And I think as allies and those of us who are Asian American and want to help the black fight in this one, we need to sort of like, we need to walk a very uncomfortable line with these elders in terms of not being apologists for where they are, but also really like trying to see the extent to which we have to take this conversation back to square one and be like, okay, this is the first time we're talking about this, and we're just going to talk this through, and
Right.
I'm going to meet you where you are, and I'm going to be as much of a resource in this journey as I can, because this is what needs to start happening with this older generation.
Completely.
Okay, so then my follow-up question is, I also see folks on like two sides of the camp, right? Online, I've seen Asian American folks who are like, who've have expressed it basically what you just said, right? Like we've got to talk to our parents, our grandparents, and have those like very day one conversations about like anti-Blackness and how, you know, we've been colonized to think that, or socialized rather, both, to think that Black folks are the problem no matter what is actually occurring, right? And having those conversations to bring people along. And then I also am seeing people who are like, they're like not going to get on board. Like they're not going to understand. They're not going to learn. And thinking about like, is it important? Like at what point do you say like, we're just not like, we're not having that conversation. And I think I don't necessarily think that I agree with that per se, but thinking about folks who are just like, I'm just not going to have that conversation. I'm just going to let that be what it is and check it when I have to, if somebody does or says something in person or to offend a person. But like, I'm going to put my efforts towards like, being an ally, doing the things I need to do, putting my skin in the game, and I'm not going to waste time having conversations with somebody who, like, based on their lived experience, context, history, is just not going to get it.
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg is evil, but he is not.
I can't deal with Tay.
He's not the main reason why I deleted Facebook.
Okay, right, by no means. Okay.
Yeah, and I've had to create some boundaries for myself.
Yeah.
In terms of like in 2020, I'm not debating with you between
Period.
all lives matter versus Black lives matter. There's like certain things where it's like if you're not at a certain place, and again, I want to recognize the bubble.
Yes, that people live in sometimes.
Right. But if there is like a place where you're not at, like a baseline, like you got to build a time machine. You know what I mean? It's like if you still
it's
think
exhausting.
Right, and it's like I think it's like
it's not fucking rocket science. People just don't want to understand.
Right.
They clearly understand.
It's like
in 2012, if you're debating between all lives and Black Lives Matter,
Do you
then
say 2012?
Yeah.
Time doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. That's right.
Almost 10 years ago. But if you're like debating that in 2020, I think it's just safe to assume you're a racist.
Period.
You
Period.
know? And again, like I think they're
are you an unintentional racist?
Right.
Like
right.
LL Cool J said. Stupid ass.
And don't get me wrong, like, it definitely is still the responsibilities of like non-Black people of color to go and have those conversations within our communities. At the same time, you know, I was on this tour once, and this white woman, younger, like I think around like my age, asked a Black elder what to do about her older white family, and they just don't get it. And this Black elder was like, "Honey, I think there comes a point where we just gotta wait till some of them just die."
Period. I feel like that. I have
seriously.
said that all the time. I feel that even in our Congress, half these people finna die. Like, yes, we need to vote them out, but also like they all finna croak in a minute.
Right. And I'm not, I respect my elders. That's a big part
of
of
the real thing. Some people you just can't have conversations with. Like there's certain things like my grandmother passed when she was like 92 or whatever, and there were just certain things that it's like based on her experience. It's like there's certain things that you can't tell them because it takes a lot to change your mindset. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
When you've grown up around certain things, and if you're not willing or trying to, like, we make excuses for older people, like, well, I'm already set in my ways, but it's like, okay, if you set in your ways, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you because you take my blood pressure up. It's a lot.
Right.
And I already eat too much salt.
I mean, we know how
We
know how much credit and historic the civil rights movement was, and we also know how much problems and homophobia and sexism was going on within that generation. And so it's like one of those things where it's like we want to have those conversations with our elders, and we are, but some of them are like, okay,
not everybody's gonna get on the boat.
Right, and I think it's we have to intercept those messages being passed down of things that are gonna influence the decision makers of our generations, and make sure that those conversations are being had too. Because I just think a lot of people, I think, are surprised, unfortunately, that our peers still have the same mindsets that should have been outdated, but unfortunately not.
Well, you learn what your parents teach you. You get what you believe from your family, from
what
your
they
parents,
teach you and what they don't teach you.
Exactly. So it's like that's why I like feel very like in the middle of that is like we know like young people. I feel I have like no I have very minimal grace for young people, like people of our generation.
Right.
Like I have very minimal grace for young.
You got
folks.
YouTube.
You feel like you have everything.
Yeah, you got TikTok. What the
you
hell?
they are giving you history lessons in a minute or less on TikTok. You know what I'm saying?
No
So I have
excuse.
I have zero grace for young people, but I do feel there is a very interesting like line of effort that you have to be like, I want to teach my mom and my grandma something. My mom is learning everything all the time and I love her for it. And my parents read all day, but like there are some people who it's like, am I going to spend time teaching, you know, my 80-year-old grandma like how not to be racist when it's like, she really don't see black people that much off like in the first place. And if she says something in the house, I hear it and I might try to correct it. But like, if I correct it out in public, then like that's what I need to focus on. But I can't like have like endless conversations day after day when it's like they're not gonna change their mind. Like, am I gonna kill myself trying to figure it out for you? Like,
Yeah, no.
I'm not. Probably not. So I can also
Afraid
empathize
not.
with that. Right.
Perhaps not.
Perhaps not. Like, it's a weird space to align. I guess my next kind of follow-up question on anti-blackness within our community or the black community from Asian American folks, if I can get my life together, and thinking about young people who are somehow not aligned. And I guess I'm wondering what y'all's perspective is on the best way, or how you think, like when you have those conversations, if you see something like that, like what do you personally think is the best approach, or how you bring young folks along? Because I do, like, as I said, I do not have grace for that, but also it's not my community.
Right.
So I'm definitely not educating nobody that don't belong in is not part of my community, because that's not my job. That's y'all's job.
Yeah, absolutely. It shouldn't be your job, and this is where we need to jump in. And for me, honestly, I think it lies in history, and I think it comes from ignorance with Asian Americans not understanding that a lot of the laurels that they rest on were won by black activists. And I think that's part of the disconnect, is that that's really not being taught. And so, maybe I'm just like naive and optimistic, but like education, history.
100%, but accurate, truthful education.
Well, looking at like Seattle history, that's been one of the things where I have learned so much about Seattle civil rights and activism history through just the process of covering CHOP and sort of seeing like the starting points of so many of those movements. And I think there's a thirst for people to understand the context of how we got to where we are now. And,
Completely.
I think a lot of people, like, for example, the history of the Gang of Four in the late 60s and early 70s with like Bernie White Bear, and there were members of...
That is new to me.
Oh, Google it.
What did you say of four?
The Gang of Four. Okay, so it was Native, Asian, and Black organizers.
Larry Gossett,
Yeah.
Bob Santos.
Oh, yeah, completely. Yeah, Larry
Well,
Gossett
teach
is the
me some. I
founder
don't know.
of the Black Student Union at UW, one of the founders.
Okay, that name did sound familiar.
Yeah, he's the councilman. He just lost to...
What did you just
What's
say?
his
The
name?
what
What's his
for?
name?
Gang of Four.
Thank you so
Gramai.
much.
Yep. He just lost
Oh.
to him.
Okay, well, I love Gramai, so like, okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah, we're
Larry
Team
Gossett was in
Gramai,
that spot
but
for a
yeah.
long
No,
time.
I mean, respect to Larry Legend.
Of
but-
course.
Yeah, but it was time. He was in there for a while,
For those of
Respect
you
to him.
who don't know, I just Googled, so I'm just going to read the very brief Wikipedia and then dig more, I think. Actually, no, I lied. That's not right. It pulled up something else. I lied. It pulled up something about communist China, so don't listen to me. I was about to read
Yeah,
to you
you're
that
fine.
is
There's
Not-
intersections on this
conversation.
episode with that.
Yeah, there
but
are
it
for
is,
sure.
But it was
Well,
not naming the people that you were mentioning.
So two of the interesting action points that came out of that is this ties back in with CHOP and Occupy movements, where the Centro de la Raza was founded. That was a sit-in at the Beacon Hill School, and that was one of the Gang of Four members who did that. And then also the Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center. That was an occupation started by Bernie White Bear in the 70s.
Yes.
And
Now I'm seeing
so
it.
I think that if Asian Americans know more about the intersectional history of activists, and if we really drill in, like, look, like a lot of these privileges and a lot of the reasons that you are able to be white adjacent are because of activist work led by Black activists.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's being taught.
Yeah, and people sleep on the history of Seattle. Seriously.
Well, that's a good thing to bring up, because those are the three occupations that happen from this coalition of Black and POC making the distinction.
Thank you.
Activists like Bob Santos doing one, Bernie White Bear doing one, and Larry Gossett doing one. And the Black sit-in was at Northwest African Museum.
Love it.
Actually, historically, the longest sit-in in America.
Wow.
Over 8 years. But that's also the place that didn't get the housing they were asking for. That they got a museum, but it was like the people who are or living in the affordable housing there aren't even Black people. And so it's like real. It's the demographic that got the least, once again, historically, and the other POC groups benefited that were just as radical during that time benefited from the movement, and Black folks didn't in this city. And I think one of the fears of CHOP, and we said a lot of good things about CHOP, but one of the fears of CHOP is that historically the people that were going to benefit specifically with the movement work happening in Seattle was going to put Black people last again. And that was kind of the concerns, I think, that if we weren't reminded that this needs to be Black trans-centered, Black people-centered, Black women-centered, that it's not going to work, and it's going to do the same things that's happened in Seattle in the past.
Because it will.
Yeah, and that started to play out. I mean, we saw that start to play out, and kind of by the time that, CHOP, when the shooting started and it was getting dangerous at night, a lot of the Black activists were telling Black bodies, don't go there. It's not safe for you.
Yeah. I was hearing a lot of mixed messages on social media.
Yeah. Also, just looping back in with the occupation, hopefully everyone knows that Elder Omari is reoccupying that space right now.
Northwest African Museum.
Oh, yeah. So he's taking it back
name.
over. So there's a group camped out. They're doing teach-ins. They're just talking about history.
As we speak right now.
Yeah, right now. So get over there. And actually,
right.
I can find you links, but there's there's ways to donate, to give them like snacks and water and all the support.
Give us all. We'll put it all in our bio, guys.
And Black Collective Voice, which is, the kind of, again, not using the term leadership, but the activist group that most solidly came out of CHOP, they're doing events every Friday. Not this Friday, they're taking a week off for self-care. But they're doing those in Jimi Hendrix Park, and they're talking about, the fact that Omari is reoccupying NAMM and sort of the legacy of Black bodies not having access to outdoor spaces and what it means to be doing these events here at this basically museum of half-assed broken promises. So yeah, it's fascinating, and it's history being picked back up. And, I don't know if Elder Omari's decision to restart that occupation was in any way tied to what was going on.
Oh, yeah,
CHOP?
definitely. Okay. Well, not necessarily with CHOP, but Omari was one of the people who originally was occupying NAMM.
Oh, wow.
And so he's back there.
Let's do it again.
And his son, obviously, Y King from Africa Town, who is fighting. Yeah. Who's fighting.
That's crazy.
Right, for land equity.
That was his father.
And doing the King County Equity Now stuff. So there's a lot of like historical context with the fight at NAMM led by Omari. Cops are in and out today. It's stuff that I think mainstream news doesn't want to cover because they know the power behind that and what could happen with a successful occupation. But, a lot of respect and a lot of fear, I think, with what Omari is trying to do, because the numbers aren't as big as they were at CHOP. And so I think when it comes to safety, I think making sure that more people mobilize around like the efforts over there is definitely important.
But y'all heard that. Y'all heard it. Y'all heard it here first. I'm a shoe. I didn't know, and now I know. So I'm gonna have to do some strolling right on by. Right. Okay, well, I know that I'm looking at our timer and I'm like, we've been here for a while, but this has been like,
it's been such a good discussion.
We
could
literally
enlightening keep it going.
To me. I have one last question and we'll switch to some fun things before we get out of here, just to get to know you guys a little bit better. Obviously, the kind of theme weaving into all of the places that we've gone during this conversation has been allyship, of course. And I would just like to ask you all, like, if you could give any advice to any allies in the making or allies listening to our pod right now, because we have a lot of those. What advice would you give them? Like how to be a strong ally or accomplice, rather.
I would say sit with your discomfort. There's going to be something in the process of allyship that's going to make you feel extremely uncomfortable. And before you act, you should just explore that feeling to its fullest and figure out what that is, because that is going to direct where you can be of most service, because allyship is something that has to be incredibly intentional.
Okay, say that then. I see you stewing over there.
I'll keep it pretty simple, because I think we talked about a lot of good things that allies should be doing. I like that we mentioned like putting bodies on the line. I think that has been something that we've seen evolve during these occupations, at least this past couple months. don't be afraid to slide in extra resources especially like non-visible black activists, black women activists, black trans activists. I think the capacity around visibility and being the most impacted through the things that we're fighting for takes a lot, and I think it's easy to forget the people who are behind the scenes doing the work. And I think it's really easy to throw money at people, not throw money, but for good cause towards people who are very visible and very vocal in the movement. But there's a lot of good orgs that are doing a lot of on the ground advocacy that may not get as much spotlight. And so doing the research around that and making sure that we're not just funding the same old similar solutions that we've been doing over and over again. It's just really easy I see so many like Instagram influencers stuff like, I'm gonna donate to BLM National, even though they have like millions of dollars.
How about like Pacific Northwest Bail Fund? Let's just do that.
Right. Let's do like a local thing. See what happens.
Or like, I'm gonna donate to the ACLU. That's very random.
Right. Thank you.
And so just finding those orgs and empowering those people, I think is really important. And just do more than the black square, you know what I mean?
Please
do more than the black square. That's the quotable for the night for sure.
I love it.
I'm so curious as to how many people in retrospect have deleted their black squares after the optics.
I hope y'all did. Y'all know who you all are.
Let me delete.
But you know what? Okay, one thing.
I know, and I'm saying that because I did it too.
I did too.
No, and I'm saying I did that too. Like I learned but I saw really quickly about the hashtags, and that piece was what I got lucky in the sense of like I didn't do it immediately. So then I saw the pushback of people being like, don't use these hashtags because like that's messing it up. So then I end up posting a black square without the hashtag. But I be doing other stuff though. So that's why I said I know who y'all are.
Right.
I be doing stuff.
Yeah, but so the internet, it's so dangerous because I think especially new allies, and maybe this is what I was trying to get at with my piece of advice, is the internet can shame you into feeling a sense of urgency to do the right thing in a demonstrative way, and it behooves you to give that a very good long think. And
before you act.
And sometimes I think that the internet creates this really horrible dynamic of forcing people to put out half-baked ideas because they feel like they have to. And I actually advocate for like, give it a think, give it a few days and see how you feel about it. And yes, maybe someone will notice if you waited 48 hours, but I think that ultimately taking the time to clarify how to best be an ally for yourself so that you can move with a sense of intention and really be of use is more important than making the internet think you're woke.
You know what?
That was this.
What you
said. Nothing
say.
else left to say after that. Huh?
Wrap it up, Dean.
First of all, thank you both for being on our show and sharing your thoughts and just unabashedly telling your stories. We really, really appreciate that. Before you all give us your Instagram and handles and such and all of that and all of those things where people can find you and follow your work, I wanted to definitely acknowledge, even though we didn't do Entrant today, I wanted to acknowledge the passing of actress Naya Rivera. She was found today in the Lake Piru. And just acknowledging that she has she left behind a small child and lots of friends and family that love her. That's just a horrible way.
I feel weird about this story, so we're going to have to talk about it.
I feel very weird about this story too.
Don't add up.
We'll talk about it next week, but I just wanted to acknowledge that because it like the story has, surface and all that sort of thing. But
also entanglements for next week.
And entanglements, all that. We talking about all that next week, and we're gonna have some incredible hoax. It's gonna be crazy.
Oh Lord!
But I had to acknowledge that.
Yes,
but
please. Thank you.
I will allow you all to give us your handles where people can find you, follow you, and your work and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Tell us where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram. I am just at Tessa Hulls, TessaHulls.
Yes.
I'm currently following my own advice to give things a good think about how best to use my really unexpected new platform. So no, I've got some thoughts and ideas on that, but anyone listening, I am not an authority. I never wanted to be an authority, and I am not going to continue to do breaking real-time comics journalism because it is unsustainable. But no, I'm trying to really give some thought about how to leverage this sort of very specific niche that I've ended up in to be of most long-term service to Black Lives Matter movement and Black liberation.
We appreciate you.
Right.
Love it.
Love it. Tell them the things, Jay.
I recently changed all my handles to match.
I love that. Come
You
on,
know?
that's because you have 10 interns.
That's
Come on,
what I'm
intern.
saying.
We just trying to get on your
Energy.
level.
Social media tip of the day, number 1.
Yes.
Make it all the same.
Yes.
Oh man, I don't know if I can get rid of my handle. It's pretty.
Number
I
2,
can't
stop
either.
writing full sentences on one hashtag.
Please.
Okay.
Two
Sorry.
things we've learned.
Number 3, I'm just kidding. It's all the same as Day Shik Jr., which is
Spell it.
my first name is DAESHIK and then JR because
Thank
my dad
you.
and I share the same name.
Cute.
Surprise.
Hella cute.
Yeah, mostly on Twitter and Instagram. Taking a small break with weird YouTube world.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
No More Truth or Drinks. We should play that next time.
Oh.
Yo, we will totally play it.
We would do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we can totally have you back to do Truth or
Yeah,
Drink
I mean, it wasn't the
easily.
cleanest exit from them. We can get it. We'll talk
can take
more
this
about that
offline.
Can we,
Take this offline.
can we talk about it on Truth or Drink? No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. We talk
Ooh,
about it.
entanglements.
Yeah, hella
Exactly.
entanglements.
But definitely down to play though.
Okay.
Let's
come
do
on
it.
with it.
Should we play that one where you have nothing else to
To
lose?
lose? Oh, Jesus.
You're not trying to lose friendships.
It has been real. So y'all have heard from the voices themselves where you can find them, where you can, see more. Obviously, you heard Day has great articles that he's written. Tessa
Yes.
has all kinds of great things coming, like this hella spicy graphic novel that she's coming with, and I can't wait
Right,
to read it
and
now.
the story of her
Right,
family.
like you got
Yeah.
the story coming, so y'all can obviously stay connected. And I
Yes.
feel like that we said it, we did it.
Yeah,
We're
that's the
finished.
real thing. I think so. With that said, and all that in our hearts and brains and such.
We just want your tummies to get flatter, okay?
Yeah, I just want First of all, follow us at Black and City
Oh,
Pod
shit, I
on
forgot we didn't do
Instagram. Follow myself at Sierra 2 Leone. Follow her at Bayesian_Baddie. If you don't know how to spell Bayesian, I feel sorry
You
for
lost.
you.
Exactly.
Now that makes me think that I need to change my damn Instagram handle. Like,
I
what is
can't
my
change
life?
mine
That's
because my
weird.
Twitter doesn't match it. My
No.
Twitter and my Snapchat match, but my Instagram is separate. But my Instagram handle is
No.
way cooler, and I'm just never changing it. So
Oh my gosh! Well, there you go. Your life is over.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
You're good.
You're good.
Thank you. Like you said, I'm good. So I'm
It's
good.
good. I don't even be using Twitter like that. So whatever. Anyway, so with that said, let's end with a prayer.
Okay.
May the tummies get fatter and the
Okay,
booties get fatter.
fatter.
Hey, see you next
We'll
time.
see ya.
Bye.